was going to be new material, and it
Yes.
still is in a way,
Yes, it
right?
is.
Just
Yes, it is.
reinventing some songs. Why did you switch from the new and kind of going back to the past to present the future for
Well,
this?
it was kind of like by accident, really. As we were boarding the plane and, we had a long journey ahead of us, I was flying to Barcelona first, actually. And I was going to do a solo show there. So I started to listen to a lot of older material, what might work, what might not. And I came across the Por Vida records, which was kind of a tribute record to help me with medical issues when I was dealing with hepatitis C in 2003. And I think it was like something like 30 different artists
Yeah.
performed my songs. Everyone from Ian Hunter and John Cale to Lucinda Williams, Steve Earle, Sun Volt, the Jayhawks, my brother Javier, excuse me, my brother Javier, and I got a lot of brothers. My brother,
Yes, I've
my
read
brother
that.
Javier, and my kept listening to other versions. Cale's version of "She Doesn't Live Here Anymore." How they just kind of got into the song in such a different way than I had ever imagined. And by deconstructing those songs, they came up with totally fresh and new versions of those songs. And I thought it'd be fun to do it myself. So when I got to Spain, we had a gig in San Sebastian, and it was just me and this pianist, Jordi, young man, brilliant pianist. And we did Sensitive Boys as just a piano piece,
Okay.
like it ended up on Echo Dancing. And so that was the first song recorded when I got to Italy and recorded with Don Antonio and Nicola Peruc. And it was just the three of us. And I would bring down songs every day, 4 songs that I thought might work in that manner. And Nicola would come up with a drum loop of some kind and make sure the key was right, the tempo was right, and we go and we just start playing, and it worked out wonderfully. And by the end of it, we had 18 songs. And they were great. I mean, it really was like a whole new record because the songs are so different from the originals.
Mm-hmm.
And I found new ways to express them vocally. And with those guys, they're such great musicians, and they're not afraid to seek new ways of finding, the heart of the song. So it was wonderful.
And so, with your vast catalog, how do you choose? You got down to 18, but how did you even get down to the 18 selecting of what you wanted to rework?
It was just a matter of trial, really, and some of them worked, some of them didn't. There were some songs that I wanted to do that when we tried to do them within that format just weren't happening. So, but we did everything. I also wanted to cover the span of my career. So
Gotcha.
we actually, the four that did not make it to the final album, Echo Dancing, were we did a cover of Alexandra Leaving by Leonard Cohen.
Mm.
We did a version of On the Nickel by Tom Waits. We did another Scarlet Butterfly by Kevin Kenny. And we did a Nuns song called Lazy. The Nuns were my first band,
Right,
punk
right.
rock band in San Francisco. So those will be held for another record, a covers record someday. And then
So cool.
there's enough material in my catalog that we could do a volume 2 also if we wanted within this kind of style.
Right. So it's just so exciting to have Alejandro Escovedo here. Tonight is the show at the Rumba Cafe with Kevin Kinney. Going on first, I believe. Doors are at 6:30. Show starts at 7:30. And we'll give some tickets away after this song, this first one that he does for us.
Yeah.
Is this from Echo Dancing or
No, it's not actually.
Okay.
But the show is, since it is solo,
Mhm.
I don't have all the electronics and guitar histrionics that I usually have with my members of the band. But I'm really just trying to tell the story of my career and different events in my life that have been profound and so I'm trying to do it through song. So I start at the beginning, which is the Nuns, right?
Okay.
And the Nuns were a band that was really just kind of a lot of, misfits, 1975. My friend and I, Jeff Oliner, were making a movie about the worst band. I actually was not a musician.
Right, which is unbelievable.
Yeah, so I was not a musician, even though I come from a large family of incredible musicians. I was not a musician. I wanted to be a filmmaker. And so we're making a movie about the worst band in the world. And this kid, the working title was 18 and a half, because this young kid is reaching the end of adolescence, and he feels that true rock and roll could only be made by teenagers, And so we thought we looked really cool, of course, and so we became the band in the movie, even though we couldn't play, which fit perfectly with the script. And we filmed one performance, and it was so bad. We performed at this club called the Lion's Share in San Rafael, which was a legitimate club. I mean, I saw so many wonderful people there. And we filmed during the day. They allowed us to film, and the bass player was so embarrassed by our performance, he stood off to the side of the stage in the wings. So all you saw was a cord going off to the side. We were really bad. And yet we filmed this one performance and then decided, it's kind of cool to be in a band. Let's be a band, And fortunately, punk rock embraced us.
Right.
And there weren't a lot of bands like ours at that time in San Francisco. Bill Graham pretty much ran the town, and so, there weren't any clubs to play. And we went to this Filipino supper club called the Mabuhay Gardens, and told them we could draw thousands of people. And, and we made up these little tickets that we handed out in North Beach, to all the beat poets that were still there and all just the weirdos in North Beach. And that became our audience. It became a scene, and punk rock came from there. And so this song that I'm about to play for you is when we moved to, after the last Sex Pistols show, which we opened up for at Winterland, we went to New York City. And it was the summer, June of '78, and we lived in the Chelsea Hotel, And since Sid Vicious had come to our house after the Sex Pistols gig, he was also my neighbor. Sid and Nancy were my neighbors.
Nancy were your neighbors.
Yeah,
that's so cool.
So this song is about living in the Chelsea at that time. It's called Chelsea Hotel '78. In the Chelsea once at 723rd, we came to live inside the myth of everything we'd heard. The poets on their bar stools, they just love it when it rains. They comb their hair in the mirror and grow addicted to the pain. I saw Neon Leon, Spider and the boys, just before the cops arrived and took off with the noise. It was nothing special, just another bar. The Max of Kansas City light makes everyone a star. It makes no sense, and it makes perfect sense. It makes no sense, and it makes perfect sense. Nancy called up 2 rooms, said, come help with Sid. We went down, looked around, the dealer let us in. We thought he was hysterical, the knife it was a joke. Don't know if he did what he said he did, nobody really knows. He stood out on the sidewalk as they busted through the door. In a white tuxedo jacket, cop had him by a charm. He loved to show off that thing, no one knows for sure, we know. Found Nancy in her black underwear, dead on the bathroom floor, and it makes no sense. And it makes perfect sense. to Chelsea once at 723rd. We came to live inside the myth of everything we'd heard. The poets on their bar stools, they just love it when it rains. Comb their hair in the mirror and grow addicted to the pain. Makes no sense, and it makes perfect sense. You know it makes no sense, and it makes perfect sense. And we all moved out, and we all moved on. You know we all moved out, and we all moved on, and on and on and on. Makes no sense, and it makes perfect sense. You know it makes no sense, and it makes perfect sense.
Wow. Alejandro Escovedo live from Studio A. We're also live on YouTube and Facebook. We're so happy to have him here today. Chelsea Hotel 78. And well, it's again, you kind of fell into the music biz by accident doing movies first. Is there footage of that at all from that movie that you did with the band that you created?
No,
at the
there was
time?
never any footage. You know, I left it with my mother, actually, what we did. And when she passed away, it just kind of got lost, you know. So, yeah, there's nothing left of that movie. Probably rightfully so.
Still be kind of fun to see. But a family of 12 siblings, right?
There's 13 of us,
13
actually.
including, and yourself. And two of your brothers, older brothers, I think, were both.
Yeah, my brothers Pete and Coke played, you know, they began as Latin percussionists. They are timbaleros and congueros, and they're amazing musicians. They played with Willie Bobo and Cal Jader and Mongo Santa Maria and Cachao they played with, and then had a band of their own called the Escovedo Brothers. There was the three. My brother Phil played bass, and Pete and Coke, and they had a band. Then they joined, Coke was the first to join Santana. And I think on the Abraxas record he was on, you know. And then Pete joined, and Pete toured with Carlos for years. I mean, all through Caravanserai and all those records, you know. He's a wonderful musician. He's about to turn 90.
Wow.
And he's still playing, you know.
Way to go.
And my niece Sheila, of course, plays with Pete, and my nephews, Peter, Michael, and Juan, they play with their dad, you know. And so it's a wonderful, you know, gift to be born in a family with people like that, you know. So they were really when I got serious about music, they really were my inspiration. And it's funny how much of their influence came out when I finally started to write my own songs, you know.
Right. And so, in terms of, gosh, I don't even, there's so much to talk about. How you mentioned songs are kind of like mini movies.
They are, very much so.
Telling that story, and that can go into a video or however. So do you like doing the videos for that because of that?
Do you know, it's funny that even though I wanted to be a filmmaker, I've never had a video.
Oh.
Never. I mean, the True Believers had a video that we did, but we had nothing to do with it. It was a great video, but we did not direct it or anything or film it. And but when I started to write, I think I was so influenced by people like Leonard Cohen and Townes Van Zandt, of course. You know, living in Austin, I was surrounded by some of the greatest songwriters of all time, you know. And Texas songwriters are very much storytellers, troubadours, you know.
Yeah.
So that was a huge influence, you know. And it's funny that growing up, loving the Stooges, the MC5, David Bowie, T-Rex, Mott the Hoople, and all the great garage bands of the day. But when I started to write songs, they were very different, you know, very different. And I think that those influences started to seep through later, but at the time it was really very much about kind of trying to find a way to express all those feelings I had kind of pent up inside me for all those years, you know.
So I remember early in my career here, it was about 30 years ago, and went to South by Southwest where Antone's.
Sure.
You did a residency there on Sundays, was it?
It was actually at La Zona Rosa.
La Zona Rosa, that's right.
And I would do every Sunday, and I would invite people who were in town to come and play with my big band. I had like 15 pieces. I had a horn section.
And everybody there was just blown away,
Yeah.
and it was just amazing to see that.
It was really fun, and after a while, we moved over to the Continental Club and did it for something like 15 years there at the Continental. Yeah.
And Antone's, did you have the album release for that at Antone's?
We did. For Echo Dancing was at Antone's. Yeah.
Very cool. So,
It was cool. It was great.
And gosh, I don't want to let you go. I know I got to let you go. But and working with producers, it's a really you take it very seriously. And who you work with, you like Stephen Bruton,
I've been so lucky with
and
producers.
like you want to share that album with him as he.
Well, Stephen, you know, I went through a very difficult period of time about 1991, where my wife died, committed suicide.
So sorry about that.
And I was raising a 10-year-old girl, and I had a 6-month-old baby with me, right? So we're going through, and I was still trying to be a musician, you know. And I was working at Waterloo Records. And so I really didn't know what I was going to do, you know. I had the orchestra that you saw, but it was so big, and we never played out of town. We just played in, you know, and it began as a workshop, really. You know, I just say I have a gig at the Hole in the Wall at 10, show up. Whoever wants to come. And we'd improvise songs, you know. But I wrote my first album that way, right? And so one day I remember there was a beautiful redheaded woman inside the store, and I told my friend, I'm going to go say hi to this girl, you know.
Oh, you weren't talking about me at the.
Well, yes, of course, but at that, and just at that moment, Stephen Bruton walks over and puts his arm around this girl, you know, but we began to talk, you know, and we were friends, and Stephen was just such an amazing, you know, he'd played with Chris Christopherson
Yes.
for 15 years, and then Bonnie Raitt, and had a great band of his own, and was a great songwriter himself, wonderful guitar player. And so when Bobby left, he came to me and he says, we're going to make a record, but we can't, I don't want you to make a record with the orchestra, you know. I want you to make a record that's about your songs and your experience, and one that you can perform on the road, you know, as a solo, duo, small band, but, you know, something that you can take out with you, you know. And it was really more about the songs than it was the instrumentation that I had with the orchestra. And so we made this record, Gravity, you know. And it was really my first experience with a producer who kind of understood my songwriting and really encouraged me to do it, and brought together this amazing band, you know, with Billy Ginn on piano, who was Leonard Cohen's musical director, and, you know, just these wonderful musicians. And we made that record. And I was still living, you know, raising my kids and working at the record store, but now I'm starting to sell my own record to people. And then
Makes sense.
and reviews came in for the record that were very, very flattering and positive, you know. And so slowly but surely I started to go back out on the road, you know.
Yeah.
But I made 3 records with Stephen. We made Gravity, 13 years, and then With These Hands. And they're wonderful records, every last one of them I love. And working with Stephen was such a treat. And then I went to Bloodshot Records, and I made More Miles Than Money, Bourbonitis Blues, and Man Under the Influence with Chris Stamey. who I loved.
Nice, yeah.
And with Chris, I found a gentleman who, like, said, you know, I want this to sound kind of like a Velvet Underground song, and he knew exactly what I was talking about, you know, and really encouraged my singing also, which no one had. You know, Stephen had, but not to the point that you know, Chris. I remember him one day saying, you know, we could make an a cappella record today if we wanted to. You know, he really loved my singing.
That's awesome.
And then I went on to make a record with John Cale after the hepatitis C thing, you know. And Cale was amazing. You know, he'd been my hero for so many years. And I loved, you know, Paris 1919 and the record Street House were really kind of templates for what I wanted to do musically, you know. And so with John, he really encouraged me to go deep, to sound strong, and to just really kind of expose what I'd been through with hepatitis C, you know. And he really treated me like an older brother or an uncle, you know, just really wanted to make sure that I was okay, and
Love it.
which was not his character necessarily, because I knew John when I was playing with Judy Nylon in New York. And John was wild, you know. He was drinking Remy still and just crazy. He was a wild man, and he used to intimidate me. And I'd always just kind of hang out. I'd never try to, you know, just kind of like blend into the wall when he was around, you know. But he was so great with me, and I love him so much. And then I was scheduled to make Real Animal. Chuck Prophet and I were going to write this record about the band, you know, the Nuns, and we wrote these wonderful songs, you know, and we were going to work with Glenn Johns, you know, and we went out and to his place in France, in south of France, and worked with him a little bit, but it wasn't the right fit, you know, and I came back and I told the president of the company, it was EMI and Blue Note, you know, Ian Ralphini, this wonderful man, that I didn't feel right working with him. And so he said, well, let's find you the right person. He goes, what do you think of Tony Visconti?
Nah.
I said, heck yeah, man.
Wow.
Yeah. So Tony came to see us play in Chicago, and he came to the sound check, and we were doing like, I think we were playing like I Want to Be Your Dog or something, you know, Stooges song. And he loved that we were rocking, you know. He wanted us to rock more, you know. And so he became the producer, and I ended up doing 3 records with Tony, and I can't tell you how wonderful it was, and what a teacher he was, and what a beautiful guide he was through those 3 albums, you know. And Chuck and I wrote those 3 records. So Chelsea was written by Chuck Prophet and I, you know, and we wrote 3 beautiful records, man, and.
Yeah.
And then I did The Crossing with Brian Deck, who was in I don't know if you remember the band from Chicago, Red Red Meat, and great
Red
producer.
M-E-A-T?
I'm sorry?
Was it Red Meat?
I believe so.
Yeah. I didn't hear you at first.
Yeah. And they were cool. We had played with them in Minneapolis, you know. So he produced The Crossing. And The Crossing, I'll do a song from The Crossing now, and that's a record I did with the band Don Antonio in Italy. I hadn't written any of the lyrics before I got to Italy, but the record was about immigration. It was about 2 young boys, one Italian, one Mexican, who meet in Galveston, Texas while they're working in the kitchen, and to start to discuss all the things they love about America. And it turns out they love American punk rock music. They love the Beat Poets, and they love Sam Peckinpah. So this is the America that they are looking for, you know. Wow. And it doesn't turn out that way for them, you know.
So then you you never really sang on your records in Spanish, did you? Until the
I had sang a song, Sabor a Mi, on a record I did with Tony.
Okay.
Yeah. But no, I never really sang. My Spanish is troubled at best, and so
But you did do, what was the La Cruzada?
La Cruzada, yeah.
And that was the one
But
you
I
did.
but I had a singer come. Alex Ruiz came and sang for me,
Okay.
and I sang some of it with him. But he's fluent in Spanish, sings in Spanish all the time. His band, Del Castillo, he's from a band called Del Castillo.
Now, did Tony share any David Bowie stories?
Oh
or
yeah,
anything?
I mean that was the one thing I said. I go, he says, well, what do you want from this record? I go, just make me sound like David Bowie. He goes, well, I'm not a magician.
And if you wouldn't mind sharing Man Under the Influence, about the culture, your father, and what that was all about. Sharing.
Well, that began with the song Wave, right? Which was the story about my dad crossing the border. He was born in Saltillo in the state of Coahuila in northern Mexico, and my father was born in 1907. He lived to be 97 years old.
Right.
And his parents left him when he was very young. They went north into Texas to find work. And he was raised by his grandmother. Always, and apparently at that time, Saltillo was nothing more than a railroad junction, And they would always wave at these trains, and they make up stories about the people on the trains, pretending that they knew who they were, or where they were going, or where they might be coming from. And so the train was very significant to my father. And at the age of 12, he had a 16-year-old cousin. Told him if they boarded this train headed north, they'd be able to find my father's parents, And he did that without telling his grandmother, though. And the story is that she was waving at this train unbeknownst to her. Her grandson was on this train,
yeah.
and he was leaving her.
Oh.
He makes it to San Antonio. It was a really perilous journey, as it is now, but you can imagine in 1919, they were dealing with Texas Rangers and such, who were not just keeping the law, but they were more like vigilantes in a way, And so he makes it to San Antonio. His relatives tell him that his parents are in Luling, Texas, which is east of San Marcos, and they were picking watermelons. And my dad's reunited with his sister, mother and father, but finds that his father is a very abusive man and ran away again at the age of 16, went west, ended up in Pittsburgh, California, where he began his family and stuff. And so my father was married to this lovely woman, Juanita, when he was younger, and then married my mother later in years, yeah.
And that you were born in San Antonio.
I was born in San Antonio, yeah. So half of our brothers and sisters are born in Northern California. That's like Pete and Coke and Alice and Jay and all of them. and then 5 of us were born in Southern California. Well, I was born in San Antonio, but we ended up in Southern California. Huntington Beach.
It's Alejandro Escovedo, again, live from Studio A.
Sorry for the long
No,
stories.
I don't want you to leave. I don't. I'm not done yet. No, almost. But tonight's the show at the Rumba Cafe. Kevin Kinney as well. And we'll take caller number 4 right now for a pair of tickets at 614-821-9223. And we're also live on Facebook and YouTube. And if you're listening and can't watch it right now, it'll be posted for you on our website, and you can see it on Facebook as well. And you mentioned Judy.
Judy Nylon?
Yeah.
You know Judy?
No. But
Yeah.
you were mentioning her, and I've also read that you're already kind of in the works for this Friendship album and a song you've already begun about her.
Yeah, I want to work with Judy again.
I know who you're talking about. I don't know her personally.
Yeah, I guess a couple of years ago, James Mastro, do you know James from the Bongos and Health and Happiness show?
Mm.
But great albums. You should check them out, But he's been with Ian Hunter for about 20 years or so, with the Ramp Band.
Yeah.
So Ian wasn't able to make his birthday party for some reason. And they asked if I would come and sing the songs, Mata Hoople songs, which was so intimidating. I go, you're crazy.
That was one of your things,
But
right?
it was one of my heroes, of course.
Yeah.
And I went and I did it like crazy, man. And it turned out really cool, And we did 2 nights. But Judy was in New York one of the nights. I hadn't seen her since I'd left New York in 1980.
Many years since. Yeah.
So she came and we reunited, and it was so wonderful to see her. I'm such a fan of hers, so proud to have been in her band at a certain time. And so we were talking, and she's been sending me some stuff, to listen to, and I plan on making hopefully a duet record, or at least having her on the next record in some way. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
But we're still enjoying this latest one, Echo Dancing, and enjoying having you here today. Thank you so much for taking the time.
You're welcome.
And we'll have another pair of tickets. We'll have another pair of tickets to give away after this song, and the show's tonight at the Rumba Cafe. And
after all that talking, I hope I can remember the song.
You want another minute? You want me to talk to
cool.
me?
I'm cool.
Well, we greatly appreciate it. It's been an honor.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thanks a lot.
All right, here we go. Alejandro.
This one's called Something Blue. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Something Blue, and it's from The Crossing.
All right.
Wind blew my friend away. He flew away yesterday. Drumming lies, children die, they still won't feed the poor. Is there money to be made off the people's parade? They're selling broken hearts outside the door. So I'll write something blue, melody I'll play for you, and I'll sing. Yes, I'll sing something blue. You claim a victory like a hurricane memory. St. James is hanging in the breeze. We turn another cheek, velvet armor chic. We sing for the workers of tomorrow. So I'll write something blue, melody I'll play for you, and I'll sing, yes, I'll sing something blue. Nobody wants you, something blue. Maybe they'll turn to something blue. Maybe they'll see what the people need today. Let everybody say, hey, hey. Another smoky, rainy day. Magpies flown away, searching for love lost along the way. If this beginning has no end, let the one-man band begin. There's always time to tell another story. So I'll write something blue, melody I'll play for you, and I'll sing, yes, I'll sing something blue, something blue, something blue.